What's going on, Packer fans? Happy Thursday. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can find the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. We have an unbelievable 4 days coming up, one of the best 4-day periods in the sports calendar all year long, with an incredible batch of college basketball games. That opening weekend is always a tremendous amount of fun. So hope you've got your brackets filled out. Looking forward to Wisconsin on Thursday, Marquette on Friday, UWGB women on Saturday, and hopefully Marquette and Wisconsin on Saturday and Sunday as well. But the whole tournament's always a ton of fun. So if you haven't filled out your brackets yet, make sure to do so and just enjoy the heck out of it, because it's one of those great sports calendar events that happen, thankfully, every single year. And NCAA, just don't do anything to ruin this one. This is always special every time of year. So hope you guys get to enjoy a little bit of that. But of course, this is not a March Madness a Day podcast. This is the Pack-A-Day Podcast. So we've got a lot of Packers stuff to discuss today. Our primary topic is going to be Jaire Alexander and whether or not the Packers should bring Jaire Alexander back, or maybe the reasons, or at least the case for bringing Jaire Alexander back. We're going to go over that today. Some new members that I want to shout out: Kavat Rahimi, Danny Joe Heron, Beast Bumblebee, Michael Rathbone, and Shiv L. Thank you guys so much for signing up. Really appreciate that a ton. Make sure to check out all those great Pack-A-Day Podcast YouTube membership features. And if you haven't signed up yet, make sure to do so. Also, if you get the chance, like, subscribe, comment, give those 5-star reviews. The most recent review on the Apple podcasts is a 3-star review, because I titled the emergency podcast when the Packers signed Aaron Banks a emergency podcast. There was a question mark on it of emergency. Really, it's an emergency. So we got downgraded on that. So if you would like to maybe even that one out a little bit, we could use a few extra 5-star reviews, because somebody was upset that I called it an emergency podcast. So fun times, but those things always help. Nonetheless, those things always are very comedic as well, but always appreciate the support nonetheless. What I want to start off with quick, and I'm going to go through these as quickly as I can, because I could probably get on a 45-minute tangent just on these, but 5 rule change proposals that were proposed by NFL teams that now will have to be debated on and voted on moving forward. Only 5, interesting, none debating any of the new kick return rules or anything like that, which was slightly surprising. But the first one was a proposal that the automatic first down is eliminated for holding and illegal contact penalties. So if there's a holding penalty on defense or an illegal contact penalty, let's say, for instance, it's 3rd and 15, and you hold someone or have an illegal contact, you would get the penalty yardage, but it would remain 3rd down. It wouldn't be an automatic first down. I see this having a very, very, very minimal opportunity of advancing for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's really difficult to sort of understand just how big of an impact that illegal contact or that holding penalty could be. So, for example, if you have a situation in which there's like an out and up, right? And you see the out and you realize, oh, he's going up and I can't stop him. If that ends up being a 5 or 10 yard penalty with no automatic first down, I mean, already that player's probably going to grab him, right? But now you're really incentivizing just grabbing that player, taking the 5 to 10 yard penalty and making sure that they don't get behind you, and not even giving an automatic first down when that was probably maybe even going to be like a 70, 80 yard touchdown play. Not giving that an automatic first is a tough sell, right? And you can't just do it depending on the severity. Like, you don't want to open that whole box of worms. So yeah, I don't think this one will pass. I think the other unintended consequence of this would be you could potentially see more illegal contact and more holding, and that's not what the NFL wants. The NFL wants defenders to be as literal hands-off as possible to open up more passing. People tune in to watch the passing game for the most part. The common fan, the casual fan, I think even most hardcore fans like to see big explosive plays on offense. It's already becoming harder and harder to consistently throw down the field with all the too high safety looks and, teams daring you to run the football. Getting those big explosive plays is hard to come by. So making it even more difficult and giving the defense an advantage here, or less of a penalty by, holding and having that illegal contact, I can't see the NFL going for it. So I'm actually against this one. I can see and understand why it would be proposed. I think in certain situations, it would be an advantage. If it's a 3rd and 25 and you get an illegal contact penalty up front, giving them an automatic first down on something like that it's brutal. But I think unless you want to get into the minutia of debating each one and should it be an automatic first or not, I don't think you want to do that. So I think this one does not get approved, and I think I would keep this as is if I were the NFL. Number two, Packers want to eliminate the tush push. They have yet to give a good reason, whether it is competitive advantage, disadvantage, or injury related issues, which the data does not support. I don't think that this is going to pass. I don't think Green Bay has a good enough reason. And my guess is that this stays in the game. It does not pass, and that the tush push is a legal play and will continue to be in the NFL. Maybe teams are just sick of it. Maybe you get rid of that pushing element to some extent, but I don't think Green Bay has enough of a case to stand on here. And my guess would be that it stays. I don't really care on this one way or the other. If you want to eliminate the pushing from behind on the tush push, I'm fine with it. I'm cool with it. I don't have a take either way. I think the best way to get this out of the game is stop it. Figure out a way to stop it, and then it gets out of there, right? Until you do it, it's going to probably continue. And I don't see a logical reason from a rule standpoint to take this out of the game. But if they want to eliminate it, I'm fine with it. If they don't, I'm fine with it. I don't really have a preference here. Number three is postseason overtime to regular season overtime. So the same rules that apply to postseason overtime now go to regular season. I think that's mostly smart. This is another one where if you want to make sure that you don't get these really long overtime games in the regular season, especially for Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, I'm more okay with it as is right now. I really am happy with the change in the playoffs. I think it makes a lot more sense the way that it is in the playoffs now. I would probably be slightly for this, but I don't have a major opinion one way or the other. I don't know which direction this one goes in. I could see this one going either way, but I don't have a major issue one way or the other on this one. Number four, this one makes a ton of sense. So right now, if before cutdowns, right? So before you get to the 53-man roster, you have a 90-man roster. If a player gets hurt for the season prior to cutdowns, you cannot play, or you can place them on IR, but you don't get an additional roster spot on the 90-man roster. So the proposal here is if you have a player that's out for the year, meaning you're not going to designate them to return at any point. They literally, blew out their Achilles or whatever, and it's clear they're going to be out for the entirety of the season, that you would be able to place them on injured reserve, and their 90-man roster spot would no longer be occupied, and you could pick up a new player for that 90-man roster spot. No brainer to me. Makes all the sense in the world. There's no reason really not to do that. I think it makes sense. I think that should pass. I don't know if it will or not, but that seems like one that I can't see people really being too offended by or any reason not to pass it. And then the last one, last but not least, the one that I probably could go on forever, playoff seeding. If you win your division, you still get in the playoffs, but in the criteria for getting in the playoffs is the same. So 4 division winners and 3 wildcard teams, but those teams are seeded based off of overall record. To me, the easiest solution in the world. You got to make the divisions more important. You got to make the divisions more important. The divisions are important as is. If you don't think Green Bay, Minnesota, Chicago, Detroit want to beat each other, I don't know what to tell you. That's why you have divisions. You have these rivalries. You play them twice a year. They already are important. Also, you are getting an automatic bid into the playoffs if you win your division. And once you win your division, all right, let's say you are, in week 11 or whatever, week 10, 11, something crazy, you win your division already. You might say, well, there's actually more incentive now to continue to go out and win because now your seeding still matters. Like you could have to fight for your number 3 or 4 spot. So you want to continue to win. It incentivizes winning and continuing to play well against your division, which you continue to play against usually in those last couple weeks of the season. So I don't see any reason why we are incentivizing some crappy division winner that goes 9-8 that they get a home game. Why? Why are we incentivizing that? The incentive is you win your division, you put those other teams in your division down where they're, maybe not going to make the playoffs. You beat your rivals and you get a playoff spot. That is plenty to incentivize with winning your division. You want to make sure you get in the playoffs, win your division. That is still a true statement in this scenario. Now you incentivize winning even more because regardless if you won a crappy division or whether you're on the top of a top division, you want to continue to winning to get the best seed possible. That creates more competitive, just more competition at the end of the season between these teams and makes it so that teams have more to fight for through the course of the season. And I'll go back to the NFC South last year. All right. Who is more deserving of a better seed last year? A team like Minnesota and Green Bay, who had a better record, or yeah, I think at least close to. I have to go back and look at the standings really quick here. But is it the team that even was at a better record in a much harder division? So Tampa last year was 10-7. The Vikings were 14-3. The Packers were 11-6. The Buccaneers beat up on the Falcons, the Panthers, and the Saints. And we're rewarding them with a home game from that rather than the Vikings and Packers, who were far better teams and had to go against a tougher division. They had to go against Detroit and both of themselves, right? The Packers and the Vikings, and the Bears even are still as the same record, and probably were still a little bit better than the Panthers and the Saints last year. Reward the team that had the tougher strength of schedule and that actually had the better record. There's no world that you could, well, they won their division. Who the frick cares? Who cares that they won their division? They don't need a home game because of that. They get in the playoffs because of that. And there have been years where a below 500 team has won their division. Imagine last year if the Buccaneers would have got in at 8-9 and the 14-3 Minnesota Vikings would have had to play on the road to an 8-9 Falcons or Buccaneers team. That is an 8-9 team, or at least an 8-8 team. I don't know. I'd have to look back if an 8-9 team has done it, but at least an 8-8 team. I want to say maybe even a 7-9 team has made the playoffs before. Let me see. What's the worst team that has made the playoffs? All right. After some quick research, it was a 7-9 team. The 2010 Seattle Seahawks were 7-9 when they made the playoffs. That to me does not deserve a home game. So let's cut that out. Let's cut the loophole out. Just because you win your division doesn't mean you should get that. It means you get in the playoffs, but then reseed it 1-7. I think it creates more competitive balance. This is one that, to me, I'm like pretty open to debate on stuff. I don't understand how anyone could be like, it's a better way to do it as is. To me, you're doing it as is because it's been that way. Like if you were starting from scratch and looking at it from the most logical point of view, I don't know how you could decide that a team that wins its division with a far worse record should get a home game against a team with a better record that had to go against a tougher division. It just does not make sense. Does not make sense. There's any level of explaining or anything that anyone could do to change my mind on this one. So I don't care that much about it to debate about it or get in a fight about it or anything like that. But I don't think there's anyone that's going to change my mind. So I would love that to pass. I think it's a no-brainer. I don't think it passes, but I hope that I'm wrong on it. All right, let's get to our main topic for today. And that is the case for keeping Jaire Alexander. Now, I have gone in great length already, and a episode is out there. In fact, there's kind of a couple episodes out there, but on why Green Bay is likely to move on from Jaire Alexander. You can search that up, and there's probably a 30-plus minute episode breaking down every single detail and minutia as to why it is time to move on from Jaire. That's out there already. You can go view it. Today's the counterpoint to it. I try to give you the information and you guys can make the decisions for yourself. And I think that's kind of the best way to do it more often than not. So today I'm going to go through kind of playing a little bit of devil's advocate and say, what would be the case for actually keeping him in Green Bay? I'll start by saying here, I don't think he's back. I do not believe that he will be back in Green Bay. If I were a betting person, I would bet pretty aggressively that he is not a member of the Green Bay Packers this year. And I have yet to find anybody that covers the team from a beat writer standpoint, or even like, obviously Aaron Nagler or Zach Cruz, or I don't want to put words in everyone's mouth here, but everyone that I have talked to, Justice Mosqueda, everyone that I've seen post about it, everyone I've seen talk about it, everyone does not, that I've like literally to a T. There's yet to be a single person that I have talked to or that I've read or, research this on, again, Rob Demovsky, Pete Doherty, anyone that believes that Jaire is going to be back. I believe that the person that's done kind of the most reporting on this has been Rob Demovsky. And I talked to him on the Pack a Day radio show a week ago, and he said Jaire's camp has actually been surprised that there has not been a release or a trade yet. They were expecting it by this time. Everything seems to kind of be continuing to trend in that direction. So I'll start by saying my belief still is that Jaire Alexander will not be a Packer in 2025. If you want to go or if you want to know why, again, check out the previous episodes on it. I'll also add on top of that, I don't have a dog in the race here. If Jaire is back, if somehow Jaire is back, there's a level of excitement that comes with that because he is so freaking talented as a player. And if he's back, My singular hope will be that he stays healthy, and that if there are issues with the Packers and Jaire, whatever that might be, whatever disconnect might be there, that it absolves and it resolves itself, and that this ends up being a really great thing for the Packers because he's so freaking talented. So the hope for me would just be, please stay healthy. Please stay healthy. You're getting a pretty big contract. You're a super talented player. Please stay healthy. You haven't been healthy in a long time. It has been 4 seasons of playing 50% of the time. Please stay healthy. That's all it is. I have no other horse in this race one way or the other. I can see why they'd want to move on, but if he's back, cool. Let's do this and let's hope that he can stay healthy in 2025. I think both sides personally could do for a change here. I think Jaire could probably use a change of scenery. I think the Packers are probably ready to go in a different direction with some of the issues that they've had with Jaire and him not being able to stay healthy. But I'll say it one more time. If he's back, I'm all on board. And I just hope that he goes out and plays a really great season, which we know he's more than capable of doing. I know a lot of fans want him back and think that it would be a very good move to bring him back. And so if that's your prerogative, well, today is the episode for you. And that's kind of why I'm doing it, because I've seen it over and over on the radio show, on the, Q&As, on the everywhere. I've seen it everywhere. The Bleacher Report chats, people like, why are we not keeping Jaire? Why, this seems like a no-brainer. Why are we not keeping Jaire? Well, today I'll go over the reasons for keeping Jaire and be kind of your devil's advocate here. What would a return look like if Jaire does in fact return to Green Bay? How would that possibly work? What would that sort of process kind of entail? I think you can keep him certainly on the salary that he's on just fine. That should not be an issue. He has a $25 million cap hit this year. He's got an $18 million cap hit if he's released. So it's $7 million more. There's more to it than that. If you haven't watched the other video, do so, because it explains in detail the exact implications from a salary cap standpoint. It's more than just that 7 million, but for 2025 alone, it's just 7 million more. It's not that big of a deal. I think one of the big questions would be here is, how does this reconciliation, come to place? Who reaches the out first? Who has the olive branch first? Is Jaire reaching out to Nate Hobbs and saying, hey, welcome to Green Bay, or congratulations on being a Packer? Is that a first step towards a olive branch, towards a reconciliation? Kind of still acting like that, captain-ish type player, somebody that is welcoming a player to the team. Could that be something that gets it going in the good graces? I think it would take Jaire Alexander reaching out to the Packers and saying, hey, can we work on something here? Maybe the Packers go to Jaire and say, hey, let's work this out here. I don't know what the best way to go about that would be, but it does feel like some reconciliation would take place. And it would seem to me that the better version of this would be Jaire going to the Packers. But it could be a two-way street. And I don't know who would blink first or who would make that move first, but there's going to have to be some sort of just coming together in some way that clearly has not taken place as of yet. Now, maybe the biggest reason why this could happen is the Packers realize they can't get anything out of this. Like, they're not finding anything on the trade market. Jaire Alexander realizes that there's no real market for him. And so maybe it's better just to stay in Green Bay. Both sides realize that sometimes the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And there's a way to maybe just come together and say, oh, Green Bay, you didn't get anything. Jaire, you maybe realize that this is your way to get your most money possible. All right, let's work together and let's figure out a way to make this work. There is one key person that I think, if you told me that there was a reconciliation that took place here, I would be willing to bet you that the person that was involved to make this happen, not necessarily Jaire Alexander or his agent, not Brian Gutekunst, not Matt LaFleur, Jeff Hafley. I could see Jeff Hafley being the one that's like, give me ownership of Jaire. I'll take care of it. I will make sure that he's in a good space, that we can work with him. This is a unique piece for our defense. And I think Jeff is good enough. And I think when I saw him coach Jaire up front, it seemed like those two clicked really, really well. I can't speak to it any more than that. That would be the person to me that could maybe bridge the gap between whatever sort of issues there are right now between the Packers brass and maybe coaching staff and Jaire Alexander and his agent. And I don't know, again, how that would work or how that would come to fruition. But to me, if there's somebody that maybe could bridge it, Jeff Hafley might just be that one. Now, why it would make sense for the Packers, all right? 1 year, 17 million ish on his contract this year. We talked about the cap hit, but how it would actually work is you're paying him an additional 17 million over this year and next year by bringing him back to the team. It's a 1 year, $17 million deal. That's not the craziest contract in the world for a player the caliber of Jaire Alexander. For example, players on the free agent market this year that got more per year than Jaire is set to make this year: Byron Murphy with the Vikings, Travarius Ward going to the Colts, Carlton Davis, forget where he went. New England, right? Carlton Davis to New England. Paulson Adebo to the Giants. DJ Reed was pretty close to that going to Detroit. Like, if Paulson Adebo, Carlton Davis, Travarius Ward are getting more than that, if you're the Packers, you have to look at it, even with the games that he's missed, and said, like, all right, this is still not like the craziest contract in the world. We can probably make this work. Adding on top of that again is that Green Bay clearly has not got what they've wanted in return so far. So maybe they thought they were going to be able to go out there and get a top 100 pick or something crazy, and that sort of trade is not materialized. Maybe they can't even get a fourth or a fifth. Might be a sixth or seventh. Maybe they can't get anything. So instead of getting nothing, maybe they recognize, hey, let's try to reconcile this because he's better than getting nothing in return. That could be a key reason why it makes sense for the Packers. Here's the other thing. There's no premium player on the market, right? Maybe still the slight opportunity of a Trey Hendrickson that just doesn't feel like it's going to materialize. There's nobody else in free agency. Your best chance at finding another premium player for this team is just keeping Jaire Alexander and hoping like heck he is motivated and stays healthy. Healthy Jaire Alexander is the best possible player that they can add to this team in 2025. And I think that that's a pretty easy answer at this point. Again, maybe Trey Hendrickson would be the only one. If you can somehow find a trade for him, that's probably the only other answer out there. But outside of a crazy trade for Hendrickson, which again, I just don't see happening, Jaire is your best bet to add a significant player to this roster, or at least keep a significant player on this roster. Jaire, we've talked about it. This team needs star caliber players. And when healthy, Jaire can still be a star caliber player that can elevate a team. If he still has that inside of him, if he can maybe tackle a little bit better, and if he can stay healthy, those are question marks that are out there. But I don't think there's any question that Jaire can be a star player when he is healthy. I do think it's better, I'll say it one more time, if Jaire would come to them. I think that would make a lot more sense for Green Bay, where they could maybe bridge that gap a little bit easier if Jaire came to them and say, hey, let's work something out here. He would clearly be the best cover corner on the team. There's no debate about that. As much as the team thinks of Keyshawn Nixon and bringing in Hobbs and, how high they are in Carrington Valentine, I don't know, but there's no question Jaire would be the best cover player on this entire team. I think Green Bay has the depth in the secondary to make this work. More on that in just a moment. It's also worth noting you have a division of DJ Moore, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams. Guess who you could use in those matchups? Now, he needs to stay healthy in order to be beneficial in those matchups. But if he is healthy, he would be massively beneficial in those matchups. Having a good corner like Jaire would pay huge dividends within this division with those particular wide receivers. It would give Jeff Hafley an entirely different weapon on that secondary than he has right now. He's got a lot of different pieces in Keyshawn Nixon and Javon Bullard and Carrington Valentine, Nate Hobbs, Evan Williams, Tano Ladapo, Xavier McKinney, Zane Anderson, a lot of different pieces, none remotely close to the peer coverage ability that Jaire Alexander has. He is a different type of weapon, a different type of piece that this defense currently does not possess. And the more different little trinkets and gadgets and different type of pieces that you can give to Jeff Hafley, the better he is going to be, because he knows how to utilize all of those different pieces to the best of their ability. And I would love to see a full season of Jaire Alexander healthy in this Jeff Hafley defense. Another reason why it would make sense for Green Bay, I don't think you want him ending up in Minnesota, Detroit, or Chicago. I think you would ideally like to see him not be a member of one of your rival teams within the division. And the best way to make that happen is, if you can't find a trade elsewhere, is to keep him on the team. Because if you release him, we know how these things usually go, right? He's a Viking, he's a Bear, or he's a Detroit Lion. So if you want to keep him out of the division, maybe better to hang on to him. And then the other thing is, like, my grades have been a little bit different than PFF's here. I have not had I've had more of a neutral level grade on Jaire in totality over the last 4 seasons ish, but PFF's grades for him, This past year, 75.2 when he was out on the field, which would have put him at 17th for corners this past year. So he is still at worst, top 20, top 25 corner in this league, which again, every team can use. His PFF grades over his career, 72.4, 71.9, 90.7, 73.4, 80.3, 75.9, 75.2. He's never had a poorly graded season. Nothing even remotely close to average in his career. And he's had great coverage grades through the entirety of that time. There are plenty of reasons why Green Bay could convince themselves to keep Jaire Alexander if that's the reason why they wanted to go in that direction. Why it would make sense for Jaire Alexander? Well, he spent his entire career in Green Bay. He can kind of keep that going. He would still be the number one corner in Green Bay, no questions asked. It would, I believe, be the best contract that Jaire could get at this point in time. I don't think anyone's beating out what he's already on contract for in Green Bay. So if he wants to make all that money, being in Green Bay is probably the best way to do so. He could earn an additional $19 million next year if he can show Green Bay that he has a great season this year. They're more likely to keep him on next year, and then he gets that additional $19 million in next year's contract by keeping him another season. So he has the ability to earn that as well. That would make it a 2-year, $37 million contract at about 18.5 mil per year. I don't think, again, he's getting close to that on the open market right now. So this is his best way to make that big chunk of money. And I'll say it one more time, I think he could clearly come to the conclusion that he would fit very, very well in this Jeff Hafley defense. So there's plenty of reasons why this could still make sense for Jaire, most importantly, financially. And then I think you get to the question of how would he fit in this secondary? And there's the probable and obvious answer of just, well, he's corner one, and that's probably what they do. I think there's a better way to go about this. If I'm Green Bay and I'm going to keep Jaire, knowing that he's played 50% of the snaps over a 4-year period of time with a variety of different injuries, I am not playing him as a full-time player. No chance. We've seen how that goes. It's not worth it to play him 60, 70 snaps per game and keep him on the field and all of the downs and distances and everything like that, just to see him get hurt and not be available when you need him the most. No, we are pitch counting this thing and we're making it so that it's easier from a wear and tear standpoint on his body. I'm going with a base defense, 4-3 of Keyshawn Nixon and Nate Hobbs on the outside. Jaire's not going to be on the field in base defense. Why? A lot of run plays. I don't need him taking on, people in the running game or having to go low on big physical running backs. I'm good. No, he doesn't need to be out there. That's not his strength. Yeah, maybe I lose him on some passing downs in that situation, but if I can gain him for more games through the course of the season, it is a well worth it trade-off in those situations. For me, Jaire's not going to be in base. Base nickel. What I mean by that is your two corners on the outside with Javon Bullard in the slot. Still your two safeties deep. Javon Bullard lines up in the slot. I'm still going with Nixon and Hobbs on the outside against 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, things like that. Jaire still not on the field. Still not putting him out there. Obvious passing down nickel, your 3rd and 10s, your 2nd and 11s, things like that. Guess what? Hobbs is going in the slot. Nixon's going outside. Jaire's going outside. We're getting 3 cover corners out on the field. Now Jaire's coming in as your primary outside corner. Dime defense. Jaire and Valentine are going outside. Nixon and Hobbs are going inside. You could also put Bullard inside and then take Valentine off, whatever. But Jaire Alexander and Jaire Alexander and Valentine on the outside with Keyshawn and Hobbs on the inside makes all the sense in the world in dime in those very clear and obvious passing situations. So big nickel and base defense. I'm not putting Jaire on the field. Nickel and dime, that's when I'm getting Jaire out there. And that's still a huge chunk of plays. It's probably more than 50% of the game, specifically just in your normal nickel kind of packages. And that is more than worth it to me. Even at that contract, keep him healthy, keep him in more games, take him out of the more run stopping situations and the plays where he's got to go and make plays in the running game. He's still gonna have to tackle. You're not going to take that out of his game entirely, but I want him in there in the obvious pass downs. That's when I want Jaire. And I think you could make it so that he is in there in those situations and you elongate his games played and put less wear and tear on his body. Weaponize him as a coverage defender. Don't make him be a run defender as much and keep him healthy for more games. That should be the key if you would keep him around in 2025. So why not do it? What are some possible complications? One is that Jaire has just decided he wants out of Green Bay. That there's now Green Bay could still be too bad, you're under contract, but I don't think you want to go in that direction. And clearly Green Bay feels the same way with them being open to trading him. So if Jaire wants out, I think there's probably just a non-starter. I think Green Bay says, yeah, we're going to go in different directions here. Also could be that the Packers don't feel like he's the right culture fit for this team moving forward. Maybe not the right guy in that locker room, just too many injuries. Green Bay could feel like, hey, we want to go in a different direction. And there may not be anything that could convince them otherwise of that at this point. It could be that the Packers already brought in Nate Hobbs with the idea and intention that Jaire Alexander wasn't going to be on this roster, meaning the salary cap allocated to Jaire is now going to go more towards Nate Hobbs, and they don't want to keep both at those sort of contract prices. It could be that this is already signed, sealed, delivered, because even if there was a reconciliation, they kind of spent that money on Jaire. Now, they can keep both. There's no question about it, but that could be the thinking in their mind. I'm not saying it is or isn't. I'm just saying it could be that way. Could be that the Packers have just run the numbers and said, we've seen 4 years of injuries. And based on our algorithm, based on what we've seen and what we can expect moving forward, as you get older, you're going to get more injuries. So our philosophy here, our future projections would point to more missed times, and we're not going to pay you $17.5 million for 7-8 games. We just can't do it. So they might already have made up their decision just based on the simple math of it, saying, we can't do this. We've got to go in a different direction. And then the other thing is just egos get in the way, whether that's Jaire, the Packers, or anything in between. The Jaire might feel that the Packers are treating him like garbage. The Packers might feel like Jaire's being immature. Who knows? I don't know what the situation is, but those egos can clearly get in the way, and it can just make for a very difficult situation to try to reconcile. That could be another reason. So those are some definite complications. When you do open up that idea of trading Jaire Alexander, it's usually tough to come back from it. Usually that's the beginning of the end, and it ends up in a trade or release. I still think the most likely outcomes here for Jaire are that he gets released or traded for a late round pick. Maybe some team gets desperate and offers something different. And I think the third, or something better, I should say, maybe like a 4th round pick. And I think the third and least likely scenario is that he returns to Green Bay. But as I said the other day, I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. Reports have been wrong before. Reports could be wrong again. And until Jaire is actually traded or released, he remains a member of the Green Bay Packers. And there remains that, however slight that possibility might be, there remains that possibility that he could play for Green Bay in 2025. And I think we laid out a pretty good reason as to why there could still be plenty of reasons why it would and could make sense. And why, if he is back, I won't mind it, hate it, be disappointed by it. I'm just going to hope like heck he can play those games and play to the level that we know he is capable of playing at. That is going to do it for me today. I always appreciate it. Let me know what you think. Would you guys bring Jaire back? Would you release him? Would you trade him? Like, what would be, if you don't get a certain pick, would you then bring him back? How would you handle this if you were Brian Gutekunst? I would love to know. As I mentioned, that's going to do it for me. I'll see you guys right back here tomorrow. Shout out to our All-Pro and Hall of Fame members, Most Hated Minnesota, PJ Wayne, John Wild, Brandon Paletta, Jennifer Wright, Boom Handle, Donna Lee, Lori Lord, Baby QB, David McCluskey, Donald Decker, Alex Wong, Peter Ritaka, Jay Zimmerman, B. Brown, Puerto Rican Packer, Dan Guessford, Step Keat, Dylan Pat Scott, Bobby Santoro, SoCal Pat, Chris Rager, Izzy Roberts, Ian Ewing, Razul Douglas Time, and Jake Corner. See you guys tomorrow, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.